Hello everybody, welcome to the I Am IT Geek YouTube channel. My name is Shabaz, and as ever, I am the IT Geek. Thank you and welcome back to this SC300 exam prep YouTube series. This is something I'm working on with Dwayne Natwick. Obviously, as you notice, Dwayne's not in the video with me right now, but Dwayne will be in shortly for the lab part of this episode. So we obviously had a bit of a scheduling conflict, as I mentioned in the last episode, so we are recording our parts separately. But this is only for a few episodes. Unfortunately, I had some family stuff I had family over, so we had to kind of record separately. But we are going to be back recording together in 2 or 3 episodes time. So please look out for that. Dwayne has been so kind and recorded this sort of his lab element in his own time. So I will be adding that on to the end of this little sort of theory element. So do look out for that. So yeah, this is episode 14, I believe. So we're almost halfway through the actual series, which is amazing. And this episode, we are going to start the topic of planning and implementing and managing conditional access policies. So this is a 3-parter. So it's going to be part 1, of course. So yeah, thank you everybody so far for your support and comments. It's been really great. So we are both, I know Dwayne will echo these sentiments. We are really enjoying doing this series. So let's get started with this episode. Again, I've introduced myself and Dwayne many a time, and I think I said I was going to do it just at the beginning of each module, so I've already done it, so you know who we are hopefully by now. We are still on module 2, and we are still looking at implementing an authentication and access management solution, which is the sort of title of module 2. So let's have a look at what we've got in store this episode. So as I mentioned, this is implementing authentication access management solution module still. And we're going to look at planning, implementing and managing conditional access part, and this is part 1 of that. I've got 3 parts. So in this episode, we are going to be looking at planning and conditional access policies, implementing those conditional access policy assignments, and also implementing control access policy controls. And then I'm going to hand over to Dwayne, who's going to do a demo, take us through a lab of implementing a conditional access policy. Okay, so putting all these things together. So let's move on to looking at plan conditional access policies. Okay, so specifically I want to look at planning security defaults. Okay, so this is quite an important part of conditional access policies. So these are pre-configured settings that you get as default as part of your Azure AD tenancy. And as part of these sort of settings, one of the features or one of the settings is that every user is required to have MFA, multi-factor authentication, configured or enabled, as are all administrators. So it doesn't matter what level of administrator you are, be it global admin or if you just have reader access. As long as you're an admin or some sort of admin rights, you're required to have MFA as well. By default, it blocks legacy authentication protocols, so that includes POP3 and IMAP and stuff like that. These are deemed as legacy. So the security defaults disables those authentication protocols. And also, the final sort of pre-configured setting is that it protects those privileged activities. So that's, for example, logging into one of the, so it could be the Azure portal or the Exchange admin portal. You get additional protection for access to those areas. So those are deemed sort of privileged activities. So okay, the security defaults help protect that. So who should use security defaults? Okay, who are these kind of sort of made for? For companies who want to increase security, I suppose is the first sort of entity that should be using these sort of security defaults. It's what comes out of the box with Azure AD as a tendency. So straight away, anyone who wants to increase security on their security posture, this is probably the first thing you should look at. If you're using the free licensing, so you do get security defaults with the free Azure AD licensing, whereas there's a lot of features that you only get with the premium. This is not one of those. So if you are a company or organization using a free license or the free Azure subscription, this fits your requirements. Should you really use this? So who shouldn't be using the security defaults then? Okay, so we know who should be using it. Where do we not recommend it? So the first thing is, if you're using conditional access policies to enforce security policies on your organization, straight away you shouldn't really be using security defaults. You need more granular control policies. So you need to use conditional access. And straight away you need your premium license, and that's where you need to use conditional access. one of the pre-requirements is disabling security defaults. Okay, so straight away, if you're using conditional access, you don't use security defaults, you disable them. And we mentioned the free license earlier. If you're using Azure AD Premium licenses, you shouldn't really be using security defaults. There's so many more granular features and better security features with the premium licensing, so you should really utilize those. So yeah, if you've got premium licensing, you shouldn't really be using the security defaults. And again, another one as well, if you've got really complex security requirements, as I mentioned, you've got really granular, you need really granular controls, then again, security defaults are for you. They're very sort of, as you saw in the earlier slide, security defaults enables MFA for everybody, users and admins. You might need some more granular control where there might be some sort of, like example being a break glass account that you don't want MFA to apply to. Security defaults aren't for you in that case. Okay. Finally, before we do kind of get stuck into the sort of demo with my good friend Dwayne, let's look at implementing conditional access policy controls. So some key points around conditional access. When we talk about sign-in risk conditional access, sign-in risk represents the probability that a given authentication request isn't authorized by the identity provider, this time being Azure AD. Organizations with Azure AD Premium 2 specifically can create conditional access policies incorporating Azure AD identity protection sign-in risk effect detections, and we're going to be looking at identity protection later on in this module. So a key important point around the sign-in risk conditional access. With user sign-in conditional access as well, we'll talk about user risk here. Like sign-in risk-based conditional access, this policy can be assigned to either through like a conditional access itself or through identity protection. Again, we're going to be looking at Azure identity protection later on in this module. So if we're looking at, let's talk about secure info registration, for example. Securing when and how users register for Azure AD MFA and self-service password reset is now possible with this user authentication conditional access policy. It is currently in preview, but it's available to organizations that have enabled the combined registration preview. So again, this is something in Azure AD. I'm pretty sure Dwayne might have showed it in a previous demo. But this is something you can enable, and it enables a conditional access policy currently in public preview. So yeah, again, I'm trying to keep the theory a bit shorter, just because we're trying to with conditional access policies, especially the labs are probably where you'll get more information. So even though there is some theory to it, it'll be seeing how the conditional access policy is created, the options you have, and why you'd use those. That's where I believe, and me and Dwayne believe, you're going to benefit. So I'm going to hand over to Dwayne to now do the demo. Over to you, Dwayne.
Thank you, Shabaz. And let's get into how we implement conditional access policies. So we are in the Azure portal once again. You can find conditional access policies by just starting to type in conditional here in the search bar, and you can see Azure Active Directory conditional access. It's also available, and you can find it in security and Azure AD. There's lots of places you can find it. And you can see here I have various conditional access policies that I've created in the past that do various things. Key piece to note when you're creating your conditional access policies, and we're going to go create a new policy in here. And a key thing is when you give it a name, device compliance app policy is okay because it gives a certain level of description, but does it give enough description as to what the conditional access policy does, that if you walk away from it and you aren't available, somebody knows what that policy is going to do. So what we're going to do is we're going to call this block access from Mac OS. All right, so we're going to say that we're going to block, and we're not going to use Mac OS within our environment. We're a Windows. All of our devices are Windows, so anybody that's trying to log in from a Mac is going to be blocked. We're going to set this up here, and we're going to select some users and groups. Let's say users and groups. I got to make sure I'm going to select my user account, my admin accounts. I'm going to make sure I don't lock myself out, so I'm going to exclude myself from this because I'm not I put myself in this group, so I'm going to make sure I don't lock myself out, so I'm going to exclude myself. So we have our users and groups, we have our administrators, our administrator accounts. But myself, so I don't lock myself out while I'm testing this conditional access policy, I am going to exclude myself. Now, I'm working on a Windows device anyway, so it shouldn't affect me, but I'm going to do this anyway. So we're going to go in here. We could do all cloud applications, or we could just do selected apps. I like to just always test it out with Office 365 and put that in there when I'm doing a demo. But if you're working in an enterprise, you might have all cloud accounts. Maybe you don't want your cloud apps to have access on Mac operating systems. Maybe you only want to block select applications that you don't want on Mac OS. You can do that. But just for ease of testing and demoing, I'm going to select Office 365. Now we're going to select the conditions. We have our user risk level, our sign-in risk level, which we'll talk more about when we do Azure Active Directory Identity Protection. We have our locations where we can assign certain trusted locations, our office addresses. We can make those trusted locations and not require conditional access in there. We have different client apps, or we can filter for specific devices. Where we have devices. If we go in here, this would be setting up special filtering rules. Our client apps we can set up for browser-based only, or mobile apps, or legacy ActiveSync applications. So we're going to use device platforms here for this particular demo, and we're going to say yes. And we're going to say select device platforms, and we're going to choose Mac OS here. You can see we can select Android, iOS, Windows Phone is still in here, Windows, Linux. All of those device platforms can be used for conditional access policies. So we're going to say Mac OS because Mac OS is what we're looking at doing here, and we're going to block access. So if we go by what our description is, well, that's what we're going to do. So we're for this particular conditional access, we're going to block access from Mac OS. We could change the description, change the name, and change the scope of this by saying require MFA for Mac OS, and we can do that as well. And so let's do that. We're not tied to it, but we're gonna just let's do require MFA. So we're not going to be as stringent as we want. So we'll say require MFA for Office 365 on Mac OS. So there's our new description there. We'll talk about session controls in another demo. In this section, we're not going to get into that right now, but we'll talk about that in a moment. Always good when you create your policy to put it to report only, so you're not locking anybody out until you test the policy. So we're going to create it here in report only. We're going to validate the policy. We're going to watch it create up here. It's successfully created. We're going to refresh to find that policy in here. And there it is down at the bottom. So what do we need to do now, and what is going to be the best route to make sure that this policy is working how we expect it to? What we're going to do is we're going to use the what if to test our policy now. So we're going to go in here. We're going to select the user identity. I'm going to scroll down here to this admin here, which I know is in scope because they are in that admin group. We're going to say we're going to look at Office 365. We're going to find Office 365 in here. And we're going to select Mac OS as the device platform. So we know we want to require multi-factor authentication to Office 365 from Mac OS for our admin group. So we put those credentials, those parameters in this what if policy, and we're going to go down here and select what if and see what happens. And you can see we got block legacy access will apply, but for some reason the require MFA is not taking place in here. And what I might be finding here is I have a bunch of different policies in here that are allowing access and allowing different capabilities. So I might have some level of a conflict. So let's go back here and let's look back and do a little bit of troubleshooting here. I have my users. My user groups are my admin accounts. Let's select another application because I do have a bunch of applications with that are with Office 365. So let's try a different application. I'm in users, cloud apps. Here we go. Let's remove Office 365 and let's just select a random one. Let's see if Yammer is in here. And Yammer is, so let's do that. Let's put that one in there. And we still have that. So let's try this again. Let that refresh. And we're going to do a what if here. And let's use that user again. And now we're going to pick Yammer as the cloud app. And again, we're going to select the Mac OS. And let's do what if now and see what happens. And there we go. So what I found here is because I have other policies, as I said, I use Office 365 a lot for demos. So what happened was because I have these other Office 365 policies in here, they were conflicting with my new policy. So we're all good now. My require MFA actually for Yammer, I should rename this. So let's go back in here real quick and change this to Yammer. Oops. And save this. We now have this all taken care of, and we have this policy is working correctly within here to require multi-factor authentication. So that ends the demo, but as you know, something to just take into account and to note when you're planning your conditional access policies, think about proper naming that's descriptive, so that if somebody comes in here, you can see I've got like a dozen policies in here. What do they all do? And somebody should be able to note and know what's going on with them. And then you can test what if, and it tests when you do that what if testing, it tests across all the policies and lets you know which policies are applicable for those parameters and what are not. So that ends our demo on planning and implementing and managing conditional access and creating a conditional access policy. So back to you, Shabaz.
Thanks, Dwayne. Another great demo from Dwayne there, this time on creating a conditional access policy. So again, we feel, or I felt at least, that if you seeing that lab would be probably more beneficial than me rambling on about the theory side of it. So we have covered some theory. I want to keep it a bit shorter. And again, certain subjects that might be the trend, whereas other subjects probably need a bit more theory. So we are trying to mix it up a little bit. But yeah, that brings an end to this episode. So that is part one of the conditional access policy implementing and managing topic. We've got two more after this. So again, thank you everybody for your ongoing support. We do appreciate it. A massive thanks to Dwayne for putting the time in on those demos. Really appreciate it. Again, all our socials are in the description. More importantly, a link to Dwayne's book in Amazon is on the description. Please do buy it. Follow it along as you're doing these sort of videos as well. We've also got a link to the GitHub labs as well in the description. Again, follow those as Dwayne's going along with the labs. So thank you very much for watching. Keep liking, commenting, and obviously more importantly, keep hitting that subscribe button. And up until next time, thank you and goodbye.